There's a whole host of tax crimes that can apply to your situation. I'm just going to discuss my top 5. The tax crime that is prosecuted the most is tax evasion. This is where they come after you for the willful attempt to defeat or evade payment of any tax. This is punishable by a fine of up to $100,000 if they come at you individually, up to $500,000 if they come after your corporation, imprisonment of up to 5 years plus the cost of prosecution. Worst part, this is a felony described under Code Section 7201. The next tax crime I see people at exposure for the most is Code Section 7203. Under 7203, it is a misdemeanor to fail to file a tax return, fail to pay tax when it becomes due and owing, or failure to pay estimated taxes as they come due. Under 7203, you can get hit with a misdemeanor for failure to pay tax, failure to file a return, the willful failure to pay estimated taxes, the failure to file a tax return, or the failure to supply information. This is a misdemeanor under 7203, punishable by up to $25,000, $100,000 in the case of a corporation, or imprisonment up to 1 year along with the cost of prosecution. I see this a lot in non-filer cases. Technically, you could get hit with 1 year in jail for each year you've been a non-filer. I do an entire non-filer series. Check out that series if this is you. For example, if you've been a non-filer and you haven't filed returns in 10 years, you could theoretically get hit with 1 year in jail for each year you didn't file returns where you were required to. Under the criminal statute, you could be looking at 5 open tax years to this criminal charge. That's 5 years in jail. Matter of fact, this is what Wesley Snipes went to jail for. He spent 3 years in jail for non-filed returns. The next tax crime I see charged an awful lot is where a false return is signed. There's something on that return that is false as to a material matter, and that return is signed under penalties of perjury falsely. The bottom line here, the signer has to believe there's something that's not true and correct as to a material item on that return. Under Code Section 7206, subsection 1, this is a felony. This is punishable by a fine up to $100,000, $500,000 in the case of a corporation, up to 3 years in jail per tax year charged, plus the cost of prosecution. This is serious business. I do an entire video series on employment-related fraud. Please check that out if this is you, but it's in this slide because it's important. The Criminal Investigation Division and the U.S. Department of Justice have said that employment tax fraud has become one of the high priorities on their radar screen. Under 7204, it's a crime to make false statements to employees or failure to provide statements to employees. Under 7205, you can be criminally prosecuted for issuing fraudulent withholding exemptions or failure to supply information. And under 7215, you can face prosecution for crimes surrounding the withholding obligations for employment taxes. And the last crime discussed is obstruction. Tax obstruction is one's attempt to interfere with the administration of the Internal Revenue laws by corruptly or by force or threats of force obstructs or impedes or endeavors to obstruct or impede the due administration of tax law. This is described in Internal Revenue Code 7212-A, and it is a felony. Obstruction is penalized with a $5,000 penalty or 3 years in jail or both.